Welcome to our event this evening. I am Drissman-Community, and I am chairman of the Oakland County Republican Party. And as I was thinking about this event, I started thinking about the way we do things, and a story I heard many years ago about a bride who was wanting to learn about how to make the family roast. And there was this great recipe that had been passed down from generation to generation. And she went to her mother and said, "Mom, why when you make the roast, you cut off both ends of the roast before you put it in the roasting pan?" She said, "Well, I don't know. I've always done it that way. My mother told me to do it that way." So she went to her grandmother and she said, "Grandma, why do you cut the ends of the roast off before you put it in the oven?" And she said, "Well, it's because my roasting pan was too small, and I had to cut the ends off to make it fit." And so I thought that story was, in some ways, applicable to our discussion this evening, because many times there are traditions and there are reasons that we do things, but we don't always remember why that came about. And sometimes we have to look at ways to change those reasoning and the traditions in which we've done. And so tonight we have an event called Time for Divorce. Jews in the Democratic Party. And it's time for us to maybe take a look at changing some of the traditions and their history for reasons that have aligned us with other political organizations. To that point, I want to thank Ezra Drissman, because with Ezra Drissman's help and Dr. Bronitsky, they brought the idea of doing this event to the Oakland County Republican Party. It was through their leadership with them and Bill Bouchard, where is Bill in the back here, we came up with the idea of creating this event. And they were the ones who helped identify our panelists this evening. We have with us Jeff Sakwa, who is the co-chair of the Michigan Republican Party. Shelley Taub, who is an Oakland County Commissioner. We have David Littmann, and David really doesn't need an introduction. It's wonderful, well-known. And leading our panel discussion this evening is Sheriff Mike Bouchard. What I want to say to you as the chairman of the Oakland County Republican Party is this is not the only time you are going to see us in Oak Park or addressing the Jewish issues. I want to tell you that as a member of the Republican Party, we believe strongly in our platform and our support of Israel. We believe that the efforts that are going on today in the Middle East to jeopardize our relationship with Israel are wrong, and we want to do everything we can to help support our allies in the Middle East and make sure that we are reaching out into our Jewish community here in Oakland County to support you and our common values, and to make sure that we support our allies, both here in the United States as well as in the Middle East and around the world. So we will be back through 2015 and into 2016, bringing a conservative message that aligns with our values to make sure you understand the candidates that best support our common goals, and to make sure that we keep peace in the Middle East and that we support our Jewish community both here and abroad. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sheriff Mike Bouchard, who is going to lead us in the rest of the discussion this evening. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm sure that with the enlightened discussion we will have with our panelists, we will hopefully change some of your ideas, and we'll learn to leave the ends of the roast on and make sure we go into new traditions going into the future.
I kind of feel like I'm in the punishment chair here. I don't get to sit up here with the big folks. I'm at the Thanksgiving table in the other room on the wobbly legged cart table chair, I think. It's a pleasure for me to be with you, and I guess serve as a moderator. I guess that's probably a natural role for a police officer to kind of make sure people stay on track, and, you know, no wrestling, no fighting, no poking out the eyes, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to be here. You know, I guess I'll just give a short preamble since I'm a panelist, but they asked me to just say a couple things. Yeah, I'm a believer that no party or no particular person deserves blind allegiance. There's lots of times I think the party which I belong to, Republicans, have done things that I didn't agree with, whether it was fiscally, and I opposed it, or for example, when I was in the Senate, John Engler started to continue a policy actually that had preceded him to cut mental health services and to close mental health facilities, and I actively opposed him. Went out and constantly voted against it, tried to get votes against it, and I still believe today that's part of the reasons we're seeing so many mentally health challenged folks inside my jail. When I became the sheriff, we had about 8% on psychotropic meds, and now we're over 30%. And so I think that's an outgrowth of a bad policy, and I don't think as a Republican or a Democrat anybody should have voted for it, and I think that's what we need to be, is issue related. And so specifically as it relates, I guess, to those that are concerned about Israel, which I think we all should be, having been there myself 3 times on counterterrorism trips and on the border of Syria most recently, and watching combat going on about 4 kilometers from where we're standing, having run from Katyusha rockets myself, I know the dangers that they face, and I know that Iran is one of the principal funders of some of the challenges, not just in Israel, but across the world. And it's lost on me how any party or any person could vote for a deal with Iran when they've proven themselves time and time again not to be trustworthy and to be the biggest exporter of terrorism that we know as a nation state. So as you go through these issues, look at who, not just party, but individuals that are supporting things that kind of fly in the face of what makes common sense to you as an individual, and then make an informed decision, I guess, is my best suggestion. I mean, we've been going round and round in the past 4 or 5 years. I'm the head of government affairs for major county sheriffs of America. So I'm the point person on homeland security issues and policy issues in Washington. As of this day, we still can't get real-time information from the federal government about who's in our country illegally, how they got here, or what they're doing here, or what their status is. So, you know, the biggest finding of the 9/11 Commission was better information sharing and coordination of information. And that's, sad to say, it's gotten better, but it's not where it needs to be. It doesn't make sense that, you know, you can swipe your credit card anywhere in the world and it will instantly know your balance and accept the transaction. And we can bring somebody into my jail today and fingerprint them and live scan their fingerprints, and in 13 seconds know if they're wanted anywhere in the country, but have no information at all from ICE or the federal government if they're not supposed to be in this country and they killed someone. That makes no sense to me, especially when we know that our borders are very targeted by terrorists. They know that we have porous borders and they can get in. And it's not just the southern border. The only terrorist ever stopped on the way to commit a terrorist act was the northern border. And we need to secure our border. So as you tick through things, not just, you know, terrorism and ISIS and ISIL, those are huge threats today. Huge threats. And I could talk about that for hours, but also economics and all the kinds of things that go into it, and then make an informed decision. I think that's an important thing, and hopefully that's what the panel's going to get into. So with that, without further ado, I guess I hand off the microphone. And, you know, do I throw a flag when somebody says something wrong, or how do I moderate? Or I just sit and smile?
If we talk.
Oh, thank you very much, Sheriff Bouchard, Teresa, fellow panelists, and ladies and gentlemen. So glad to see you this evening. So, a question, one that I have many times. You know, why do so many Jews live the lifestyle of Episcopalians and vote like Puerto Ricans? This evening, I'd like to just offer you some perspective from the demographic and economic side of things. Historically, the German Jewish immigration after 1848 was a major factor, I think, in affiliating the Jewish vote with the Republican Party. The attachment persisted in the last half of the 19th century and in the first 2 decades of the 20th century. Republicans were associated with causes that rang true with human dignity, with liberty, personal ambition, and responsibility. Democrats were emerging at the time from the era of slavery, civil war, Reconstruction, and issues promoting currency inflation as their way of reneging on U.S. debt. Most Jews of that epoch perceived the Democrat Party as less closely aligned, should I say, with the expectations and the values of what the people of the book held sacred. I think Jews in the final quarter of the 19th century were citizens at a time when economic growth, prosperity, innovation, personal property rights were the most respected and appreciated. Also, compared with the lives of their ancestors, the potential now for upward and geographic mobility, it seemed almost unlimited. I think this fluid, growth-oriented environment was a pivotal factor in underwriting individual and community expansion and optimism. So Jews venerated the Republican embrace of competitive markets and a path it provided to better education, the usual things, family security, both financial and personal, and acceptance into society, and, as it turned out, assimilation. In contrast, the closing decade of the 19th century and the first quarter of the 20th century inaugurated a wholly different scenario. Immigrants in those 3 or 4 decades, folks, beheld a rapidly changing economic and demographic scenario and a different political environment. Demographically, the bulk of the Jewish immigration thence consisted of Eastern European Jewry, including Soviet Jews. Economically, the U.S. had moved very far away from its traditional focus on individuals and the efficacy of a decentralized, competitive market system. Washington and the federal government were becoming the locus of power and the collective center for redressing grievances. So you had the progressive movement that sought centralization. You had the inauguration of the Federal Reserve System, the central bank authority. Washington had enacted a very progressive, permanent income tax, and regulations of unprecedented proportions were enacted governing trade, commerce, and finance. So by the 1930s, the U.S. already had institutionalized many elements of what I'd call statism. That was already familiar, you understand, in Europe and elsewhere. The Great Depression, when it occurred, and its legacy of hardship, greeted the newly arrived Jewish population, people whose former homelands, politically, were often textbook cases of feudalism, socialism, despotism. Anyway, those were the transformations that were occurring on the economic and the political scene. It was this confluence of accelerating statism here and the impact on the newly constituted Jewish population, in my opinion, which at that point, it was comprised about 5% of the total U.S. population, that was significant. Why? Well, for one thing, most Jewish newcomers hailed they were hailing from areas in the world that were steeped in collectivism, quite familiar to these new immigrants. From public education, rise of federal law, and regulatory control over local affairs. Much of what had been the unique and the celebrated features of the constitutional republic, a system of checks and balances, if you will, was fast eroding. So by the outbreak of the Second World War, in my estimation, much of the Western European Jewish cohort of the population had been superseded by the Eastern European community, or had disappeared altogether through assimilation with the Eastern European Jewish families or Gentile America. And by the second half of the 20th century, even the growing majority of Reformed Jewish congregations were transmogrifying away from the classical Reformed traditions. So economically, the Great Depression and the Second World War, I think, accelerated the power, the locus of power, and the focus of Jewish attention to Washington. In both cases, security, and societal acceptance. These were the recurrent imperatives for the American Jew. Possibly this was truer for the 80% that was comprised of the Reform, Reconstruction, and less traditional congregations. In any case, the times and the historical experiences of the Jewish community both conditioned and I believe deepened the Jewish sympathy with the politically identified underdogs and causes. So thus you had that era of Al Smith and through FDR, which was roughly 1920 through 1945, you saw this politically edged allegiance, or economic shift of allegiance to Democrats. Ironically, that shift in loyalty coincided with exceptional wealth formation in the Jewish communities over the balance of the 20th century. Well, habits, especially voting habits, are difficult to break. Lots of our first generation, American-born that is, Jewish immigrant families from Eastern Europe found employment in top-notch professions. By that I mean healthcare, law, media, the print, radio, and later, of course, the electronic media, entertainment, that's TV, stage, cinema, as we well know, literature, the arts, investment banking, teaching, including, of course, the universities. And now, as we know, looking back, many of these professions and institutions were also the primary and priority targets of socialists and radicals who are influencing public opinion and future generations, particularly the media, entertainment, public schools, and of course the universities. So, after succeeding splendidly in gaining financial security, the natural next step typically is to acquire status or societal acceptance. And in those positions, of course, convert to power and political leverage. Being a Democrat must have seemed pretty savvy and socially acceptable by a majority and by a minority alike. I suspect, as a sidebar, that people like Saul Alinsky was mindful of this psychology when he wrote Rules for Radicals. Hillary Rodham must have found the subject quite promising, very meaty, when she wrote her Wellesley thesis on Alinsky and his intentions and his strategy. Anyway, I believe the better, the more enduring response to the eternal quest for acceptance and financial security as a minority is to convince oneself and to convince others of the efficacy of an economic system the efficacy of an economic system, by that I mean a competitive market system, that functions within a constitutional republic to provide individuals with incentives to innovate, to work hard, to save, to invest in order to create what? Philanthropy, wealth, and optimism. Anyway, this is what advances citizen self-confidence, unity of purpose or teamwork, and most importantly, a moral energy to beat back the dark forces that are now at work in cities like Baltimore, Detroit, as well as in a world of Putins and Ayatollahs. So in summary, economically speaking, American Jews owe enormous gratitude to free enterprise and the competitive market capitalism. This is the true voting paradox, in my mind, of the past 95 years. Today, this paradox constitutes a major challenge to those of us who believe in liberty, personal responsibility that transcends the generations. Voting for politicians of any party who refuse to cut out of control, unaccountable federal spending, for example, and regulations. They must be called out for their complicity in this moral abomination and assaults on the yet unborn generations. Historically, as you well know, these trends that are afflicting us now, they end very badly, both for the nation and particularly for the Jews. Reversing this 80-20 imbalance of leftist voting preference among Jews is highly dependent on educating our clergy and other institutional leaders about the suicidal implications of empowering collectivist, power-lusting politicians. We have to stress the immorality of their actions and intent. So I believe this is the message that will be heard the loudest and is most consistent with our long and respected heritage. Thank you.
I didn't want to cut him off, he would wreck my stock portfolio, but I'm going to hold the 5-minute rule a little closer.
Starting now.
So, oh my goodness gracious. Okay, I would be remiss if, my name is Shelley Taub-County, and I'm an anomaly here in the whole state of Michigan. I am the only Jewish Republican woman ever elected to a county commission seat or a state office. I can't stand it, but I have too many notes, but thanks for it. Now, I would be remiss if I've got to go back to work, so I have to introduce a couple people that I saw in the audience. I work with Commissioner John Scott. John, are you here? Do you want to stand or wave? Hey, John, way back in the back. Those are the cheap seats. And I have a good friend of mine, David Potts. Are you somewhere? David and I work together on the Oakland County Board of Commissioners. And of course, I cannot forget my friend Linda. Where are you, Linda Glissman? She represents Congressman Mike Bishop. I'm trying to move as fast as I can. Okay, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. First of all, I'm a native Detroiter, born here, raised here, University of Michigan graduate, but I come from a mixed marriage. My mother was a Democrat, my father was a Republican. My mother was born in Canada. She was part of the Milchick-Cohen family from Windsor, okay? Those of you who don't know what that means milk. My grandfather owned a dairy. There was a kosher butcher. The other Cohen family, also named Cohen, he was a Fleischer Cohen. My father was born here in Detroit, right near the Bobian Station, on a table. And my grandparents, great-grandparents came here right during the pogroms in Lithuania. So I'm a native of this general area. My mother was one of 7. My father was one of 10. You see why I get elected. Okay. I think, and I'm not as smart as my friend here, David, because he's the best investment person in the world. You know, he worked for Detroit Bank and Trust, which was later Comerica, forever. I don't know why he retired, but anyway, he did. But I got to thinking about why I am a Republican. And besides the economic programs and the economy and how I very strongly believe in a strong economy, I think it's because so far have not seen a social program that really works. If you remember the old days, and I use the old days, your grandparents or parents may have told you about this. When someone came to town, or when someone at the synagogue or the church or wherever was having a tough time, oftentimes you went to that person's house or invited them to stay in your home to get them over the hump, okay? To kind of get them back on their feet. Now, somewhere along the line, we lost that with all of our social programs, okay? And I'm sure that when LBJ said he was going to end poverty as we know it, he truly meant it in his heart when he put in his huge social programs. And I'm sure that FDR meant it too in his heart. But they haven't worked, folks, okay? What we thought would get people over the hump, get them back to work, give them a helping hand. Okay? Have people stay in your house till we found them a job. My grandfather employed more people in that dairy in Windsor, and there are people here off and on as they came here from the old country, as they needed a job, and so on and so forth. That type of social program was meant to last this long. It was not meant to be a way of life. As Jews, we believe in something called tikkun olam. It means repairing the world. And I think we need to start thinking about how we repair that world. My personal opinion is that the best social program ever is a job, period. I think we need to get people working. I think we need to get people back on their feet. Before we end this community and or this country rather, we start looking like Greece. That's not acceptable. People are happy when they work, when they have a job, and I think this is a very important thing that I've been working on with Brooks Patterson and the community colleges in our area, trying to train people to work in industry. We have a lot of bodies, they just simply don't have the skills. David mentioned an awful lot about bringing people coming over to this country, and I agree with you, David. 1 minute. Okay, Mike, I'm working talking as fast as I possibly can. You know, another reason, and I can understand this reason, because if you were in Germany or Europe in the 40s, 30s and 40s, I was not. Many of you here may have been, or had family members who were Holocaust survivors. You had choices. Do you pick the Nazis? I don't think so. Okay? Do you pick the communists? Probably not. Do you pick the socialists? Well, they were better. Anything was better than the Nazis. So when people came over here, I believe they felt that that was their path. That was the way to go. And with the pogroms in Russia, in Lithuania, same thing. Okay? There's always an evil person, and there's a fear to this day. I'm sorry, Mike, to say this, but a fear of people of the police getting to be like the Nazis or the police elsewhere. Mike Bouchard is not that sheriff, okay? Nor are the vast majority of our police officers. We got some bad police officers, folks. We got some bad doctors. I'm married to a good one. We have some bad attorneys. I have 2 of them in my family, 2 kids. But we have some very, very good ones as well. So I'm going to conclude here, and then I think perhaps we ought to be asking some questions. Are we going to have a question and answer period, Ezra? Okay, I'll stop here and I'll give it to a very wonderful young man. Now, wait a minute, listen to this. How many women in here have single daughters? Yes, here we are. He wants a single Republican Jewish girl.
Harvard educated, too.
John.
So usually I ad-lib, but tonight I knew I was under a time limit, so I printed out notes. I want to start by talking about what is hypocrisy. See, I think hypocrisy may be defined as the misalignment or even the gap between, on the one hand, values and ideals, and on the other, actions and practices. Because is that what we're talking about? I mean, when we say why are Jews liberals, I think that is the question we're really asking. Are they being hypocritical in their political behavior? So, but that really gets to a deeper question, which I think is, what does it even mean to be a Jew, right? I mean, you can't talk about whether your interests are being met if you don't even know or understand what it means to be a Jew, and particularly what it means, I think, to be a Jewish American in the 21st century. So I want to throw out some important numbers just for you guys to brew over in the meantime. In 2012, the Public Religion Research Institute ran a major study of Jewish opinion. And at one point it asked, which qualities are most important to Jewish identity? Number 1 was a commitment to social equality, 46%. Support for Israel, 20%. That was the runner-up. Religious observance, 17%. And a sense of cultural heritage and tradition, coming in at only 6%. A year later, Pew ran its landmark study. That was in 2013, and it was titled A Portrait of Jewish Americans. And it asked its participants, and this was an open-ended question, so they were able to pick multiple things from the listing. What does being Jewish mean in America today? The top answer, 73%, remembering the Holocaust. Leading an ethical life, 69%. Working for justice and equality, 56%. Caring about Israel, 43%. And caring about Israel just beats out at 42%, having a good sense of humor. That's where Jeff comes in and he follows me. But I'm going to disagree with some of my panelists here because I think that, despite people on the right always saying that Jews are voting against their interests, I'm not sure that they are, because I think these surveys demonstrate that they've consciously reordered their priorities. So are they being hypocritical? Not at all. So David started out by talking about pocketbooks, which, that used to be the thing. It was pocketbooks in Israel, but clearly those are not the priorities. So personally, I think that there are 2 areas where, however, American Jewry as a community is being a little bit off track by supporting the left. And I like to talk about the philosophies of liberalism and conservatism rather than the parties. Because agendas are one thing, but philosophies are quite another. Number one, liberalism replaces what Shelley was talking about, which is civic association or volunteerism. Right? This was, I think, the incredibly unique feature that Alexis de Tocqueville talked about when he came to America in the mid-19th century. I did my graduate school in England for 5 years, and I can tell you that America is so incredibly unique in this respect because we do care about community, and we do participate, and we look out for other people through synagogues, churches, fraternal organizations, and things like that. It does not exist in Europe. And government clearly seeks to replace these things, and it does quite an effective job. And I think that's unfortunate because the more government takes over that realm of our civic life, which is unique, it tears apart the fabric of what makes American society unique. And that is the core, I think, of the classical liberal/conservative philosophy. Second, I think, a completely obvious thing is that no people in human history have been persecuted more or suffered more at the hands of the state than the Jewish people. So I would think that we would be very attuned to the dangers of an increasingly expanding government and a government that seeks to take away our Second Amendment rights. Self-protection seems to be an obvious thing. Yet also in this Pew study, it found that 72% of Jewish Democrats, 72% of Jewish Democrats disclosed that they prefer a bigger government that offers more services. So then there were two more areas where I don't see Jewish tradition, not necessarily the historical experience, but the Jewish tradition and Judaism as a religion aligning with the philosophy of liberalism. The first is that liberalism, I think, seeks to universalize, and it seeks to erase the distinctions that make all of us unique. It wants predetermined outcomes, and it wants to believe that all of us are fundamentally equal, not in our rights, but in our ability, our talent, and our ambition. And I think that's just a delusional view of human nature. Conservatism believes quite the opposite. The second thing is that, this should be really apparent to anyone who knows anything about Judaism, is we respect tradition, right? Tradition is the core of what it means to be Jew. And liberalism, however, believes that the cultivation of human reason, secular human reason, and objective knowledge about the world around us leads to an unstoppable pattern toward enlightenment. That with enough knowledge, time, and resources, will inevitably become this like social utopia. Well, conservatism, on the other hand, believes that that's not quite true. And really what matters is that we seek to conserve. That's where conservatism comes from. So we respect the ties that bind one generation to the next. And in those ties lie an inherent, latent wisdom. Liberalism disrupts that wisdom because it thinks that the past is just full of our sins and bad stuff and that nothing can be learned. So conservatism respects these things and understands that once that knowledge is lost, it's very, very difficult to get back. Very difficult, if not impossible. So I'm going to throw a little twist in here with 1 minute left, which is that I don't think Jewish Americans actually are that liberal at all. I think they're extremely conservative. They just don't know it. They vote for the Democratic Party. I think Jews are conservative because we're extremely tribal people, or at least we were. I don't know, my generation clearly doesn't have quite the same Jewish identity, judging by the fact that I'm the youngest person here, which I kind of expected would happen, sadly. But think about it. I mean, Jews live together, very high coefficient rating in terms of geographical location. No, I'm older than you. Oh, no, you're older than me. That's right. They insist, at least for a time, that their children attend Hebrew school, have bar and bat mitzvahs, they go to Jewish camp. And not so much true in this generation, but for a long time they avoid intermarrying. So that's very tribal, and that completely contravenes the ideas of liberalism and universalism. The idea that we need to protect the community, and we need to protect an identity. We can have a discussion about how much that's been lost a little bit later. So I would just say that, the last point is if you look at state and local voting patterns with Jews, they actually tend to vote much more conservatively. It's a lot closer to being a split ticket. Interestingly enough, now we know Jews vote big ticket on the national level for the president and senators, but when it really comes to local congressmen and their local officials, far more conservative. So you could say we're not as noble as we thought. We are actually putting our interests before other communities, because when push comes to shove and decisions and actions really affect us directly, we very much do care where our kids go to school, the environment that we live in, and that we have personal security and safety with the police forces. So that's That's it. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jeff Sakwa, and Jews are known for their humor, so I just want to tell Sheriff Bouchard, why don't Jews go to jail? Because they eat lox. Thank you. So, I am the co-chair of the Michigan Republican Party. Push back a little bit. All right. I really don't use a microphone because I got a big mouth. Another trait that we have. But it's very important to note the last 3 chairs of the Republican Party have all been Jewish. Before Rana was Bob Shostak, and before Bob Shostak was Ron Weiser. So I find that to be very interesting. We gained 10 points in the last election with Mitt Romney. And the number one question I get asked when I go around being a Republican, they say, Jeff, have you run into any anti-Semitism? And I said, less than 0, and I'm completely proud of that. The only weird question I got was, do we get upset over Christmas time? And my answer was, do you guys go to all the malls? And they said, yes, but we own all the malls, so keep shopping. So the bottom line of this whole thing to me is that I'm a concerned parent, and what makes me more concerned is he is the only young person here today. And what do Jews do? We stress education. And I know when I came home every day, do your work, do your work, do your work. My grandfather died when my dad was 10. My dad was always a Republican. He grew up poor. He said he knew the difference of having money, not having money. But he also knew the difference of working hard. And if you study history, the Jews started the union. Okay, because workers were abused, we did our job. We started the union, guess what? We have things called OSHA now. We get paid for overtime. We take complete credit for that. We changed it. So a lot of things happen and things change. This country overthrew slavery without a war because socially we were responsible and we changed that. And I might add, the Republicans were the ones that freed the slaves. So there's, clap on that. So when you study all of our histories of Jews, everybody coming to Ellis Island from Poland, Russia, or wherever, they came here to get away, like he said, from a powerful government. Yet we read these statistics that they want more government. It is hypocrisy. It is appalling. When I talk to young people, very simply, when they go to college their freshman year, I ran for Michigan State University, you talk to a kid his freshman year of college, they're a kid in a candy store. Why? Because they don't have anybody bossing them around anymore, right? Mom and dad don't tell them what time to get up, what time to study. But I always tell them that's the Republican Party. If you don't want to go to class, don't go to class. You want to stay up all night? Don't stay up all night. But if you go to class and you work hard, you will achieve. That's the Republican Party. You work hard, you get paid. I don't know why we are afraid, and this president's afraid of this word called exceptionalism. That's what our country is founded upon, and that's why we all came to this country. That's why we all send our kids to private schools when we can. That's why we try to send them to the best schools that we can, to give them the tools they need to succeed. I don't know anybody in the Jewish community who doesn't know the word tikkun olam that Shelley mentioned earlier. We give, and we give till it hurts. We don't do the 10% thing. I don't know why. We don't do the 10% thing because maybe we wouldn't do the 10%. But at the end of the day, we are the most giving people in the world, in my humble opinion. I want to say that I don't speak for all Jews. And when you study the Jewish religion, there's Orthodox, there's conservative, and Reform. We're made up of all different beliefs, but I tell you what, but we all stick together when it comes down to it. And lately, with this particular president, I'm proud to say I spoke and got to introduce Governor Kasich from Ohio on Saturday. There was 4 people I knew there that were devout Democrats that said they've had enough and they want to vote Republican. So, where I believe the Republican Party loses it is in our messaging. And I want to say, looking out in this crowd tonight on a Monday night and a beautiful summer day, this is as big as any crowd we've ever had. And usually when I give my speech, as I did with Governor Kasich, if we had LeBron James at that building, or Jim Harbaugh, or Mark D'Antonio, the line would have been around the block. And I have to tell you, I'm 55 years old, I'm appalled at what's going on in the world right now. They're killing Christians. ISIS, we're afraid to confront them. Why do people people go to sporting events and know the names of all these people that play sports. No one's a bigger sports guy than me. We need to tell our children to wake up. Wake up and smell the coffee, because our country is not the one that we grew up in. This is the first time in the history of our country where they've done polling to say the next generation will not have it better than ourselves. And I know we as a Jewish people strive to give our kids the best, to be the best. And this country has all the rules with our Constitution to be able to do that. And I believe, just as he stated, liberalism wants everybody to be the same. I don't want anybody to be the same. I want you to be the best that you can be. And that's what our country was founded upon. And when I deliver to people, and I talk to people, one by one by one, I can get people to come over to the other side. There's certain issues. I was amazed last time, I'm not going to, on the abortion issue, how many females were just hung up on the abortion issue. Pro-life, not pro-life, that was their whole decision made. Well, I'll tell you what, I will never be a one item or one, you got to study the whole candidate. I think it's preposterous to have one thing to base your vote upon. So the bottom line is, when I see this many people here tonight that care, I think it's incumbent upon each of you, particularly if you are Jewish, and you happen to be Republican, even if you're not, you think about coming home, talk to your kids. And I want to say, more importantly, that I do respect the Democratic Party, because we do live in a country that we can talk things over. And you want to come to my house on Thanksgiving, you'll hear some good screaming and yelling, no problem.
Okay, so two quick, that is loud. So two quick things. If you're running for office, just stand up for 2 seconds so people can see who you are and either sign, or we've got 2 petitions. And so Aaron is running, and
Mike Gadsden, Oakland County Prosecutor in 2016.
Dave Haas. I actually have to thank you, because when Jeff called me and told me that he was going to be running with Rana, he said, I want your help. And I said, under one condition, because we've had, as he mentioned, numerous Jewish leaders of the Republican Party in Michigan, and not one of them stepped foot in Oak Park. So Jeff said, I will be there anytime, any place, and I will be there. And I think that's the whole point of this event. A lot of people have asked, well, you're just going to have a room full of Republicans listening to Republicans talk about Republican issues, which is true. But the difference is, most of the people in this audience are not actually involved in the Republican Party. And so it's more of a challenge, because the Republican Party, for the most part, we haven't done a good job at reaching out. This is the first event that we've ever had in Oak Park. And this is the first event for really the Jewish community. And so there'll be more, but there's many reasons why Jews don't vote Republican. And whether we like it or not, many Jews are afraid of Christians still. 2,000 years later, that's one of the reasons why Jews don't vote for Republicans, because they think they're a bunch of crazy Christian, right-wing nuts. It's true. And so the challenge is, how do you get past that? How do you get past that? Whether we like it or not. Many, many young people are like, well, abortion this and that. These are the real issues, and they come and they get stuck. They get stuck on one issue. So the challenge is, as a party, to how do you unstick the one issue? And for the Orthodox community, how do we unstick the one issue? Because nationally, we vote as Orthodox Jews, primarily Republican. On countywide and local levels, with the exception of the sheriff and Elbrook-Patterson, we don't vote Republican. And that just shows in the numbers. We don't vote Republican on a local level, and that includes the Orthodox community. And so that is the weird dichotomy of the Jewish community. And in some ways, Jonathan's right. The Jews are very liberal, but it's not just the conservatives, not just the Reform Jews. It's Jews across the board because we want to feel like we're doing something good. And so with that, we go through, right, the bigger the government, the smaller the person. It's true. And we all believe that. I think everyone in this room believes that. The question is, how do you go from believing that to actually doing something about it? And so that's where things like this actually do make a difference, because each and every one of you who are in this room, some of you are regular diehards, which, I see you guys all the time and all the events are fun. But many of you, this is your first Republican political any event whatsoever. And so you look around the room and you say, wow, this is really cool. The world is rapidly changing. First of all, I have to thank my wife, because she puts up with a tremendous amount of crazy Republican things. And so I thank her. But it's also a matter of getting past all of the issues and getting to the point where we can talk on all different issues and make sure that we can talk, number one, as Jews to other people on more than one issue, and we can talk as Republicans on more than one issue. So I'll give you the prime example. This is one thing that Jonathan and I went back and forth because we were worried, because yesterday was Tisha B'Av, which is it's marked as the saddest day in the Jewish year. It's a 25-hour fast. It's a miserable day. And it's supposed to be, because you remember the first temple being destroyed and the second temple being destroyed, and you remember the Holocaust. And so I found it appropriate to take the time to read the 150 or 160-page Iran deal. And yeah, it's just as bad as everyone says it is. It's really bad. And really long also, but it's just as bad. And so we didn't want it to turn into this big Iran thing and how bad Iran is and this big Israel discussion is, because frankly, when it comes down to it, the Republicans, let's say, are 60% pro-Israel, and the Democrats are pro-Israel. But overall, it's only a 60-40 split. So when Republicans talk to Jews and we say, well, I've been in the Republican Party for 8 years, Ezra, I don't understand the Jewish community. Why don't they vote for us? Because we're so pro-Israel. Jews do not vote one issue. And in fact, when you look at Republicans and Democrats, it's a 60-40 split. And that is the number one takeaway. Is whether we like it or not, Israel is not the number one issue. Because there's a whole host of issues of economics and social issues and all those things, whether we like them or not, are all rolled up into it. So moving, it's a good discussion to have. And so, just as a side note, the cookies are from Zealand. But I encourage all of you, if you are not involved in the party at all, there are things you can do. You can sign up as a precinct delegate, which is about as base level to be involved in the party. You can be involved in the party by just helping out, by doing things, by making phone calls. And it does make a difference. If you don't think that a 5%, 10% shift in the Jewish vote could swing an election, we live in Oakland County, where a 10% swing in the Jewish vote, where the Democrats don't spend any money on the Jewish community because they know that they don't have to, makes a big, big, big difference. And in a national election, where Michigan has not been a swing state and Oakland County is a swing county, the numbers do make sense.
Okay, we've got a whole host of questions. So we're going to be done with this August 13th. Exactly, that's why I said that. So I think I'll just kind of mix these up and then we'll take them as they come, I guess. Now when no one feels like they got theirs picked over and there's no list that was given on who gets their question asked and answered. I'm just mixing them up and feel like being away here. And one thing I would like to say to Commissioner Taub, who mentioned police and how the Jewish community feels about police because of some of the historic things. You know, I think we all have to be aware, if we're not aware of the past, history repeats itself. Time and time again, we've seen that. And one of the things that I took my whole senior command staff to was the Holocaust Museum. And how does a police agency become co-opted and become the arm of the Nazis when their principal job is to defend and protect the people, not to carry out the orders of a government or a state? Our job is to protect people first. And if somebody's getting in the way of that, I don't care if it's the president or the governor or whatever party, our job is to stand in front of the people. So we're very much aware of that and the history there and seeing how they were co-opted and became an arm of the Nazi Party. And it's not just there, it's elsewhere. Police are not, nor should they ever be, an arm of anything other than protecting and serving the public. That's our opinion. So, this first question, some of the writing is not such that I can read very clearly. In view of the deal with Iran, what is the sense of American Jews that this deal is a direct threat to Israel? So I don't know how you want to do that. You probably won't have time to go through the whole panel. You want to just one person take each question? All right, one person take a question, then we'll be able to get through more other questions.
Well, I can't answer for the Jewish community, but I would say if you want to look at a pivotal decision, it'll be Chuck Schumer. And he is so dedicated to what I would call the radical leftists and their historical, since the French Revolution, development and schism in relationship to church and state and public affairs. You go from Karl Marx to Trotsky to Herbert Marcuse to people like Alinsky. And this, unfortunately, has been a shift in the Jewish thinking, all Jewish so-called heritage thinkers. And that's the strand that Chuck, we'll watch. Maybe I'm dead wrong, but I suspect that will take the majority of the Democrat loyalty. It's a very anti-Israel type of stance, in my estimation. But that's my prediction of what we'll see.
What I believe with Mr. Schumer is going to happen, he's going to wait to see how it plays out and not do anything. And then if it's overwhelmingly in favor of passing it, then he can vote no and look good as long as it still passes. So watch that happen. Thank you.
I'm going to moderate here, finally. One question, otherwise we're not getting through the stack. One person, you can raise your hand and grab the question if you want. There's another rank question. So if you want to steal it, you can. Iran has military bases and weapons completely surrounding it. Is it really a threat to Israel, or are they just threatening nuclear weapons to get money?
Both. No, I mean, Iran, yeah, no, they're bad. They're bad people. And 3 weeks ago when we had AIPAC address the synagogue in the main sanctuary, when they talked about Hezbollah having the capabilities of raining 4,000 rockets a day, which, to put that into perspective, nearly 4,000 rockets fell over the entire Gaza war, and they have the capabilities of doing that within a day. So and they're directly sponsored by Iran. So $100 billion would be really, really, really bad for them, regardless of the nuclear thing.
150.
On a total, yeah, 150. On a side note, by the way, I wanted to thank the sheriff because as a citizen of Oak Park, the sheriff's department took over Royal Oak Township, which, if you've ever been to Royal Oak Township, you would know, number one. And they took it over and turned it around and made this city, Oak Park, much, much, much safer with very little fanfare and zero money. Probably lost money.
Okay, the next one has 3 or 4 questions in it. I think I can only do one off of this. Is tonight's event going to be repeated across the country?
If you know anyone who wants to host it in their city, you can have them call me. But I will say one of the next stops we will have locally is hopefully go to a black church and have the same thing. Now, it won't have the same turnout because, frankly, while 25% of Jews vote Republican, only 5% of blacks vote Republican. So you'll have a smaller crowd, but it's just as effective. And as you can see, there's a need for it. So.
The next question is, how can we educate our Jewish clergy who are very left in influence?
Quit giving them donations, that's easy. To be 100% truthful, I don't want to say the name of this particular rabbi, to be very unfair. I did get a phone call from him. He's 100% absolutely had it. At my congregation, one rabbi has been very Republican. I want to point out that when Dick DeVos ran for governor, I took him to the high holiday services, got a few dirty looks from a few people, and the rabbi did not make a speech, not politicize anything. He just sat there to let us know that he cared about the Jewish people. He also wrote a check for $1 million to the National Holocaust Museum. But at the same time, Jennifer Granholm was extended that same invitation. She decided not to show up, which is her prerogative. And the bottom line is it's 100%, since I'm the co-chair of the party, it's why he called me. I'm not sure that he would make that announcement publicly, but I will tell you the last 2-3 weeks on the pulpit, he has talked about Iran and the negativity of Iran. The ADL's against it. Jewish Federation took a stance against it. And AIPAC has 441 meetings on the Hill schedule the next week. So that should tell you what's going on.
One question? You can take the next one if you want. Whose phone's going on?
It's 1 minute.
1 minute for the whole panel? Are we still a constitutional republic, or are we now a liberal socialist agency or administrative state?
I still have faith in the constitutional republic. However, we have a president, unfortunately, who will turn us into the latter.
How can someone support the Republican Party when they seem to stand behind Mr. Ezra and Donald Trump?
I can take it. I can take this one because I've been probably the most vocal Republican, outspoken against Dave Ezra. I asked them straightforward, and I think a couple of people were there when I did it. There are a lot of wacky people in our party. A lot. But there are also a lot of good people, and I think the question itself is not a fair question, because you can point out many, many Democrats who are just as crazy. And I went to Iowa to stump, actually, for John Edwards, speaking of a high-quality person. I went to Iowa because I wanted to see what Democrats were like. And, by the way, they're just as crazy. Really crazy. And so, yeah, Donald Trump hits a nerve because, frankly, he speaks his mind, and in this weird political climate, that's refreshing. I find it interesting, but it's refreshing to some people. But the reason he's so refreshing is because people are not speaking up. The moderate middle, as I like to call it, have really become complacent. Farmington Hills Republicans and West Bloomfield Republicans didn't get involved until all of a sudden Joe Nolanberg was not around and he was voted out. And then all of a sudden they woke up and realized, oh my goodness, I'm represented by someone who I can't stand. And that's what it took. That's what it took. It took Gary Peters being elected before Farmington Hills Republicans, West Bloomfield Republicans woke up. And so that's what it took. And so unless the middle are going to stand up, people like Donald Trump and Dave Eastman have a voice. And that's unfortunate, but it certainly does not speak for a lot of us and most of us. And you have 5 panelists, 3 of which who are officials in the party. So, you know, that I think that speaks for itself. And the 2 officials in the back, I mean, good folks, by the way, Mr. Bouchard. John, I didn't forget you.
This one, I'll summarize. Why have the Republicans moved so far to the right, the Democrats moved to the left? I'm not desirous of supporting Democrats anymore, but some of the movement has made it difficult for me to support the Republicans in general.
Go ahead. You know, this is sort of one of my favorite questions because people get accused of being in the middle or being onto the right, and I don't think that anybody should judge people when I will tell you that Mitt Romney was seen as a very moderate candidate to the point where the far right sat out and didn't vote, period. So that person who asked that question, he said that they're far right. I would argue that our last presidential hopeful was anything but far right. I would argue that our governor is anything but far right. So I kind of disagree with the question. When you study primaries on both sides, people usually tend to go far left to pick up the base during the left and then go far right on the other side. And then when they run the general, they kind of squeeze towards the middle because they're trying to win a race. And many people say, I don't trust that guy because he flip-flops. Well, the guy's trying to win a race too. So, you know, you got to do your homework. It's scary. I will say Barack Obama did keep his promise. He is transforming the world, just not the way I'd like to do it. So, thank you.
Both the black and the Jewish communities have much in common when it comes to supporting the Democratic Party. Are any of you open to having a similar discussion in the black community, particularly in Detroit? I guess that was a unanimous yes. We should adjourn. Of course. The filibuster, just...
We are the only party to have an office in the city of Detroit that's never closed in the last 3 years. The Republican Party. Thank you very much.
Do you see similarity of lasting?
Jews don't write good.
It looks like lasting the Jews in Israel by Iran with a bomb and killing 6 million Jews in Germany. Do you see a similarity, I guess, between?
Yeah, I think it's very scary to me because when people have started out to say we're going to decimate the Jews, whether it was a pogrom, whether it was something before in France, whether it was Hitler, they went about and did it, okay? This is very scary, folks. And I'll tell you what, for my dear friends who are not Jewish, who are sitting in this audience, they may get us first, but they're going to get you next, or vice versa. So I think we have to all be aware.
This is probably for the 2 younger folks. Do you have any suggestions? I'm not calling you old, Shelley. I'm calling us wise. Do you have any suggestions on what to do to attract or invite young people to these events? How can we get them involved?
So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to answer the other question, because I think they're related. I was just waiting for it. I was going to say, you don't need to convince clergy to come over to the right because they're so left, because honestly, there won't be any congregants anyway. I mean, I am the youngest person here. I go to lots of Jewish events. I'm always the youngest person. Every type of synagogue event I go to, whether it's a political event, a discussion, a book review, or just services on a Friday night, I am the youngest Jewish person there by far. I say Jewish because there are probably more non-Jews who are actually working there than there are Jews my age. What's interesting is, between 2000 and 2013, 72% of Jews intermarried. And if you look at that, a demographic crisis, and you'll notice if you go down the line, there will not be very many Jews left, and people will identify as, I think, Jewish in any meaningful way within probably 50 or 60 years outside the Orthodox community, which is, of course, experiencing a demographic boom. What's really interesting is, if you look at California, what's happened is this is the free market at play. Now, Jews my age, who are so anti-institutional, don't go to synagogue. What they do is they look at an online menu and they select a service that had a price next to each. An hour of Hebrew study, a bar mitzvah for $5,000, everything's a la carte. So Jews my age don't want to be part of the synagogue. They just want to have intimate relationships with a rabbi, in and out, and that's it. It's not lasting. I think that's scary. My last point is that, in my experience, and I go around the country talking to Jews, I see that the only Jews my age who are genuinely going back to any form of Judaism are going to Orthodoxy. And you see that heavily in Oak Park. And I think that's simple. It's because it's intimate, you can go at your own pace, and there are no commitments. If you want to, and I'm sorry I'm going to knock Temple Israel here, but if you want to speak to a rabbi, you have to go through 3 schedulers, and then maybe you get a chance to talk to them a month later. If you want to speak to a member of the Orthodox community or an Orthodox rabbi, you can probably do it on the same day. So I think that there's something about a more genuine form of Judaism that does appear authentic, that shines through. So in terms of converting our clergy, I don't think we have to worry, because all the synagogues will be shutting the lights in a few years anyway. Sorry to be so depressing.
The next one is foreign workers, especially since so many studies have proven that America is not deficient in different kinds of workers who are currently working in other jobs, because foreign workers have taken those available jobs. Your comment? That's an economic thing there, Mr.
Well, the question, again, is one of morality. We have the jobs, and we also have the passes and the ability to bring the workers in that we want. The question is, do we have the incentives? But also, to go back to the theme of this evening, where's the morality? If you want to challenge, and if you want to spread, you have to be on the side of truth. And if you want to convince, you have to show you have a morality argument. And whether it's Americans being tapped as taxpayers to support Planned Parenthood, it's immoral. And so you get, whether it's clergy or the institutions and so on, same with immigration. There's a place for immigration. My wife can speak about that as not only a brilliant writer and former president of the Bluefield Republican Women's Club, but also coming here with perspective from the DP camps in Germany. So there's a place for it, but the morality of letting the illegals step in front of the legals, where's the morality? Where's our heritage? Unfortunately, the liberal part, so-called liberal, but as illiberal as they can possibly imagine, but these have walked away from the heritage and from the book, and so they don't know the difference. And this is where we're getting confusion. And to bring back truth and clarity will get us farther than any other way intergenerationally.
The next one is, are Jews traditionalists or change agents? If the latter, then Democrats' message resonates.
A little bit of both. I mean, someone said to me yesterday, it's always the Jews' fault. And it's kind of true. Karl Marx was Jewish, which is awful. We don't like to say it, but he was. At the same time, Jews have been at the forefront of economics, law, medicine, everything good. So yeah, it's tough. At the same time, we, as a millennial, as a young Jewish guy, it's hard to keep away from the fact that we like to keep things moving. We constantly challenge. It's just the nature of, I guess, Jews in general. But at the same time, you also have to take a step back and say, what is right? It doesn't matter. I mean, the question itself is awkward to begin with. Change agents. I don't even know what that means. But it's to go back to Mr. Littman, it's what is the truth? Find the truth, and then you'll be fine. The truth generally sets you free, which I think is a Christian message, but it's a good one.
Do you think Israel will react if Iran deal, is passed? Everyone say no. I'm getting no's and I don't knows. Doesn't look like anyone wants to expound on that. Why are Republicans so intent on social issues that turn off moderates?
Wait a minute, why are moderates so interested in social issues that turn off Republicans? Again, it's a single issue. And if you're going to be a single issue person and you don't care about the economy, you don't care if people are working, you don't care if people are being murdered day in and day out in the city of Detroit, okay, because they have nothing to do and they have no jobs, then, be a single issue person and vote for the other side, okay? But if you have concern about the children in Detroit and about the hugest moral issue, in my personal opinion, of this whole century is not educating those children. If you're not concerned about the fact that children are having children after generation, we're just keeping people quiet. We're not doing anything for them. Those are the moral issues that Republicans believe in.
I'm not sure we're going to get unanimity in this. With respect to Israel, which GOP candidate for president would be your choice? But there's a follow-up. Would Hillary Clinton be better for Israel than that putz Obama? So, anybody want to take one or both of those?
Almost all of them would be better. I like that almost. Except for Paul.
For Shelley, if the GOP favors enabling the people to be self-sufficient, why oppose the earned income tax credit? Do you want to take that? If it says for Shelley, but I think anybody can answer it. If the GOP favors enabling people to be self-sufficient, why oppose the earned income tax credit? It sounds more economic than.
Well, unfortunately, if you look at again, I think Shelley mentioned this too, if you look at a government program, what you find is it actually inverts in practice. It always sounds good. That's why you have to listen to the gibberish of your politicians, but then look what the actions, I think you define that as hypocrisy. The actual function of the credit increases dependency, mostly because they forget about the marginal tax rate that people would face trying to enter the job market, given the tax structure, the complexity, and the punitive nature of our tax code. So you actually keep a lot of people in a dependent state, which is fine for the Democrat Party, because that's dependency. They can promise things, and it's a tiger chasing its own tail. So that's why one would be against those kinds of government programs, as opposed to a market system that incents the able-bodied, able-minded, emotionally capable people for getting out of poverty and dependence on any government.
How can the Jewish community improve the Republican Party?
What we do best, volunteer. That's what we do best, people. Let's get some more volunteers. Let's take back the White House. Let's change America. Let's change the world.
Please describe what a moderate Republican looks like.
Oh. I don't care about gay marriage. Don't care. Doesn't matter. Abortion's awful. It's awkward. It's an awkward thing. It's a terrible thing. Morally reprehensible. Yeah, but at the same time, you know, after 3 months, you know, you can have the debate whether it should or shouldn't happen. And we do, but under 3 months, I don't. Again, it's a different moral issue. I know that makes a lot of Christians uncomfortable, and I understand that. That period. I know that morally, Christians have a different view of abortion than Jews. And that, yeah.
Don't generalize, man.
No, okay, that's
not true. Have you seen updated ultrasounds? 2015, present day? You would change it to...
I don't know if there's such a thing as a moderate Republican or moderate Democrat. I think there are different forms of Democrats, different forms of Republicans, right? There are libertarians, social conservatives, neoconservatives, fiscal conservatives, blah, blah, blah. So it depends on how you define your own form of liberalism and conservatism. And I think this is one of these ridiculous trap questions. And I think that it's absurd that there are people in both parties that call out everyone else and say, you're not a Republican or you're not a Democrat. I don't think very many people today actually have a true understanding of what either of those philosophies mean. I think that we all need to do a little bit more reading. And I'm not talking just about Federalist waivers and the Constitution, but I think we should all take a stroll back through Friedrich Hayek and Acton and Burke and Adam Smith. If we really want to understand and claim that we're standing on the side of history, trying to exclude others by saying, oh, you're the latecomers of the party, or you don't know what conservatism is, because in fact, very few people today do. So that, for me, is a huge priority, I think, to get political discourse working in this country, especially, I think, getting younger people to read those texts, I think, is critical.
Voting not for Democrats is voting for security of Israel. Because that's not really a question. Basically, if you don't vote for Democrats, you're supporting Israel. I think that's the way it is. That's not really a question. Inasmuch as the label Republican can mean anything across the political spectrum, which I think we just heard, why can we not support calling ourselves conservatives? Republican is a political party label, while conservative is a philosophy, which is more important? I think you basically just work through that. If the Democrat Party is not pro-Israel, yet they reportedly get 70% of the Jewish vote, why?
My young colleague here told me to read this. To drill down a bit more, the Public Religion Research Institute revealed that Israel was the most important voting issue for a mere 4% of Jews. If you, I'll read in a second, likewise, the J Street poll conducted around the same time showed that only 10% of Jews listed Israel as one of their top 2 voting issue priorities. I believe it was Breitbart just did a poll that most Jews are in favor of this Iran issue. Did you see that? Which was appalling to me. Yet all these organizations are against it. I would also like to say that I care about Israel way more, not as a Jewish state, but as a democracy in the Middle East surrounded by crazy countries. And that's why people that beyond Jews love Israel, because they're the same country surrounded by insanity. I don't think it's really even a Jewish issue. It's a democratic issue, a philosophy issue. Thank you.
Someone I know from the IDF supports Bernie Sanders. Do you trust Bernie Sanders' alleged pro-Israel stance, or will he flip-flop to the Democratic base in its hostility towards Israel?
He's not going to win, so who cares?
They're not going to win, who cares? It's kind of the universal answer. Holy cow. That's
As a Jew, I do like soccer.
too small a print there. How can we do a better job of getting our conservative message across to our fellow Jews who are lifelong Democrats? Dear Dems, your party has gone so far to the left that they have left you behind.
I mean, you can just look at who's running for president. You know, everyone picks on the Republicans. You have 16 people ranging from Donald Trump to Mike Huckabee. And we have a broad range of agreement and disagreement. And that is what makes the Republicans really, really strong and really, really weak. And if you look at the Democratic Party, the people who are running are Bernie Sanders, who's been about socialist for twice my age, for a really long time. You have Hillary Clinton, who started the Iran deal. You have Martin O'Malley out of Baltimore, who's about as left as they come as well. And the only guy who is remotely sane on the Democratic side is the guy out of Virginia. What's his name? Webb. Jim Webb, who's probably the most moderate, normal Democrat, and he doesn't have a snowball chance of winning the nomination because he's nowhere close to being even remotely left enough for the Democratic Party.
That's more a statement. Israel should not be 60-40 issue for the Jews. Israel is our insurance policy. It should be 100%. Politicians cannot sell Republican ideas themselves, so why don't Republican donors and moneyed interests invest more in pop culture outlets?
I couldn't agree more with that. When you study Obama, who beat Hillary, I don't think anybody expected Barack Obama to win. I know Hillary certainly didn't. I think he did a tremendous job with young people, with MTV, et cetera, et cetera. I think the young population today is about instant gratification and technology, and we as a party are working feverishly to work with younger people who maybe want to pay off their college debt, who maybe like to get a job. And I don't believe that Barack Obama, of all people, has done more to erase the middle class than any president in my 55 years. But I do believe that young people need to be enticed with entertainment and technology, and our party's history has not done a great job with that, and I think we definitely need to improve in that, and I'm going to work my tail off at doing it. Thank you.
So these are kind of, I think, hitting the same topics. Why do people put individuals in a category? Can't people have beliefs from both sides? I think that spoke to the differences that you mentioned within the parties, unless anybody wants to expound on that. The majority of social workers are liberal and advocates for social justice. How will more conservative views promote equality for the underprivileged.
This is another central divide, I think, between liberalism and conservatism, is that we believe in two different forms of equality. Liberalism, since the French Revolution, which sought to construct society from anew, sought equality of outcome. And as I explained before, that's unrealistic because human beings are born inherently different, and we have different ambitions and different interests in life, so we can never create that flat society that I think liberals seek, particularly progressives. And whereas conservatives clearly believe more in equality of opportunity, which means everyone is equal in the eyes of God and before the law. The perversion of that idea, I think, has led to many of the problems that we have today in America. That's very intimately tied up with the corruption of the idea of America as a democracy, where we really are a republic. So I think this is the, I don't want to go too long, but this is an idea I think everyone should read up a little bit more about, right? It's the difference between democracy and a republic, and the different forms of equality.
Sounds like you've read a little bit, Jonathan. Probably a really interesting dinner conversation. He was single, as I recall from the beginning. The government has become our #1 bully. Corporations are a close second. We're becoming enslaved faster and faster. Can we trust Republicans to change their actions more than their words? And then a second kind of follow-up question, i.e. is the debt ceiling raised some number of times in a row by both parties?
I think there's a distrust, and as we look around us in this community, this general Detroit community, we see a lot of things that are going wrong in government. But most of you are living in Oakland County, and based on Standard & Poor's and Moody's, I'm sorry, you are living in the best run county in the entire country, okay? You are living in a county that, even though we had a terrible, I tend to call it a depression, it was pretty darn close to one, recession, a great recession, according to our economists, we still maintained our AAA bond rating. We didn't lay people off. Everybody in Oakland County, the sheriff, Mr. Patterson, the clerk, the prosecutor, everybody, all the county-wides along with the Board of Commissioners, kept us whole in this county. Your taxes weren't raised. I know everybody laughs at the little tax break you're going to get at $15, $20, $30. We don't need your money, so we're giving it back. It's a little bit. It's not a lot. It's about $75 million. So when you talk about government not doing its job, I agree with you. It's tragic. We are very frugal, as you are, in your homes and county government. I don't have a car, and I don't have an office, and I don't have a secretary, and I work out of my home on my laptop. Well, they just gave us laptops when they're terrible, but I wouldn't say that. But that's what I'm trying to tell you. When you're disgruntled about government and how it's actually working, you're really living in a county that is a model for the entire country. Our budget is balanced not for 1 year, not for 2 years, but for 3 years, and we're looking at over 5 years. And if you look at other places, other police departments, I'm just using that in general, or other prosecutors' offices, you find that they can't get along with the county executive. Just look south of us. Wayne County is in a terrible mess. And it's not because of Warren Evans. He's trying to do the right thing. He inherited that. We had never inherited a mess like that. So I think when you're disgruntled with government, come visit me or come call me and I'll tell you what we're doing in Oakland that is so utterly amazing. Yeah.
I just have one simple sentence. There's nothing the private sector doesn't do better than government. End of story. Thank you.
Just to dovetail on the Commissioner's comments, that shouldn't be a Republican thing or a Democrat thing. It ought to be a government thing that when you have programs, they're most cost efficient, delivery, and only what's necessary. And so when we went into this budget time, I'm the biggest part of the county budget with 1,300 employees and $141 million now. I got the biggest part of the cut. So I had to cut 165 positions and $16 million right out of the chute. But what we did is what you would do at home. What's the priority? If you've got a leaking roof and a torn carpet, you fix the roof. And so we went through what we do and said, what's the most important services to the people? Everything else, even if we love it, has to be offloaded. So, you know, when we lock people up, we cut 500 beds in jail. But I said we have to keep in jail who we're afraid of, not who we're mad at. We don't have money for both right now. And so we went through it, and that's what we did. And I think it's immoral for government, you talk about morality, to take more money from people when they have less. In that downturn, our taxpayers were suffering terribly. It would have been wrong for us not to recognize that and cut ourselves and not do what they were facing. And so we eliminate, because we do the 3-year hard budget and the 5-year lookout, we saw the clouds coming well in advance. And so 3 years before the recession hit, I froze hiring. So by the time it hit, the wave hit, I had, through attrition, cut 165 positions, and I didn't lay off one deputy. I'm told that we're done with questions. We have 1 minute for closing, each person. 1 minute.
All right, so first of all, I want to thank all of the volunteers, and there are a lot of people who volunteered and spread the word, and in particular, Dr. Robert Buchstadt, who helped a tremendous amount. So I wanted to thank him. I also wanted to thank the Michigan Republican Party, the Oakland County Republican Party, the Farmington Area Republican Club, the Birmingham Bloomfield Hills Republican Club, and, hold on, who am I missing? West Bloomfield Republican Club? Greater West Bloomfield Republican Club? And who else? Young Israel. Well, I mean, yeah, Young Israel. Yeah. But what the point is, all these clubs signed up because they felt it was important to do this type of event, and I think that's the most important thing. And so I thank all of you for not only coming, but signing up to be precinct delegates and to volunteer as well.
Yeah. Secondly, appreciation for your being here. Let me sum up my comments by suggesting to the admission, do not allow politicians to define themselves. You must define them by their actions, by what they do. And hold them to account. The farther the leftists move from reality, the more vulnerable they become to our sticking them with the truth and the morality of the truth. So the leftists thrive on defying restraints, defying disciplines, and defying, ultimately, as we're seeing now, the rule of law. So it's imperative for us to say, when you create these kinds of debt, and the thing that will really get us, because the economics always will overwhelm the politics in the long run. When they defy Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, they have to be impeached. And we've had 3-4 years before the Republicans took over of no budgets being presented, if you can believe the morality and the immorality of that compared to us. So that's my way of holding them accountable to the truth. The truth will win out.
Thank you. If you believe in family and country, rights of the individual to succeed, and personal responsibility, you are a Republican.
So I just want to say a little bit something different, as I've been saying all night, I suppose, which is that we can talk about Iran, Israel, Hamas, Hezbollah, but to me it almost doesn't even matter if there won't be people who identify with Judaism. So I think that the most important thing is that we don't take our eyes off the ball, and we understand that we need to, I think, reconstruct some form of Jewish identity. Otherwise, all these topics are frankly irrelevant. How do we get Jews to vote Republican? Well, if there aren't Jews, then you don't need to persuade anyone, right? So I saw another study that showed that I think only 60% of Jews knew the first book of the Bible, and I would doubt that less than 5% would be able to name all 5 books in Hebrew. So I think that moving forward, there needs to be, and this is a very complicated subject, but there needs to be a reevaluation of Hebrew school education and how we teach Jews to be Jewish. And I think there needs to be an emphasis on Hebrew, Torah, Talmud, all those things. Because right now, you have a Jewish community which is disproportionately liberal, which loves celebrating multiculturalism and identity, ironically, while basically not seeking to protect their own. That is an ultimate hypocrisy, and one that I think should really be at the forefront of our conscience as a Jewish community. And for those who are not Jewish, I'm sorry, but I think it's worth noting.
Jewish state school for all is the only one.
I can't really agree with you, but I probably agree with you.
Well, being the co-chair of the Republican Party, I'd like you to know we have elections through delegates. We have 1 Indian, we have 2 Jews, we have 3 women, and we have 1 Mormon. So all the stuff about old white people, it's not the party that you think we are. We're open to each and every one of you. I don't care where you come from, where you go. You want help, as he said, we're going to be there. If you're Jewish, we want you, we love you. If you're not Jewish, we want you, we love you. You know why? We're all Americans. Bottom line is, we're all Americans. End of story. Let's do it together. Let's get our country back. Let's get our world back.
Good evening.
State conventions on Shabbos, so observant Jews can attend.
Good evening. My name is Greg Dildillian, and I'm the Vice Chair for the Oakland County Republican Party. And I just want to extend a personal thanks for everyone who participated tonight. And let's have a great hand of applause to our panel. And I'm one very, very happy Republican tonight, because this is a great outreach tool, and I think this is going to be a blueprint for us going forward. Thank you so much.